Hello, everyone. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. Happy to be joined by Dog Nation's recruiting insider, Jeff Sintel. And this is a very busy edition of our program, as you might imagine, as we head towards the start of the early signing period coming up in the month of December. On today's program, very interesting video look at one of the names to know for the 2021 class, the linebacker Barrett Carter out of North Gwinnett. We will hear on this program from four-star tight end Theo Johnson as he wrestles with his decision, and not just ultimately the school that he's going to choose, but ultimately the message that he's receiving from schools like Georgia, and can that message be trusted given the fact that apparently what Georgia's pitching him on is an offense that looks far different from the one they're using right now. But off the top of the program here, Jeff, five-star running back Kendall Milton, who we always love to hear from. He's been bullish about Georgia's ability to put together an elite class for 2020 a lot before. And Jeff, you've had a chance to talk to him about some of the names to know in terms of who might still join this class, and really those top fan favorites that dog fans would love to see a part of this class. Kendall Milton has weighed in on those here for us today.
Yeah, I mean, guys, there's it's already up on dognation.com, went up the other day, but there's a great off-the-field story this week about Kendall Milton. We wrote it. We'll even get some online chatter in on that as well. But for you folks that are here today that want to know about recruiting, let me give you a little bit of Kendall Milton, who I kind of kidded with him. I said, man, you know, he kind of acts like a ninja on the recruiting trail. He makes these moves. He's slicing and dicing every day, like that game my kids used to like, Fruit Ninja. Did your kids ever like Fruit Ninja? Well,
I know what it is, yeah.
Like, Kendall's working, but he doesn't like anybody to know his moves, you know, and I call him a ninja because of that. But sometimes he'll offer up names about the guys he's working on, and he started off with two names, and then I added in a name later.
Well, let's hear about those first two names of guys that Kendall Milton's still working on for that class of 2020 here Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
I would say right now, striving for Elias and Kelee, two of the top DBs in the country. I feel like they could come in and make that immediate impact and basically, help us get to that, lockdown secondary that we're striving for. So, those are two dudes that have that dog-type mentality to just get better every day.
So, obviously, it's not a surprise to hear him mentioning the name Kelee Ringo, because that's a name we've talked about in this show a lot. Admittedly, I've always thought it was just going to be a really tough needle to thread when it comes to Elias Ricks, someone that Milton is friends with, but I've always assumed that Milton's friendship with Ricks clouds the judgment of the likelihood that Ricks ends up at UGA. What did you make of those two names being mentioned by Kendall Milton?
Well, the first thing that went through my mind, man, was you remember that tweet a couple weeks ago after the LSU beat Alabama 46-41, great game. I'm sure you guys have heard of it a lot over the last week, but
you may have seen that one.
May have seen that one, but Elias sent out a tweet, and it was basically like, recruiting over, recruiting finished, my recruiting is totally done. He's cradling the LSU helmet. That to me seems like it's going to be pretty hard for anybody to move him off his spot right there. Kelee Ringo is a lot less set in any sort of way right now. I mean, you've got Texas, who continues to be going in the opposite direction of what they would want to do in terms of bringing in a guy like Kelee Ringo. There's Oregon there. There's Georgia. Those are always the three schools there. Reminder, though, Kelee Ringo says he's going to take an official visit to Ohio State and Alabama as well amongst his top five. But, Ringo's been a name. You'll see top targets. He's a name that has always been front and center, right in the middle of the crosshairs for Georgia for the 2020 class.
And we'll see his name on top targets again here in a moment. One real quick thing on him before we hear more from Kendall Milton. I think for some Georgia fans, there's a little bit of angst that grows with Ringo because of how deliberate his process has been and how long he has sought to sort of stretch this out. But in addition to that, the fact that we're now a good ways away since the last Kelee Ringo visit to Georgia. And if we say follow the visits, given the fact that he lives in Arizona and can't make those visits, I don't believe he's been in season for the Bulldogs at all. Is that a reason for Georgia fans to get nervous that he just hasn't been to Athens in a while?
Well, he's only been to one other place besides that, and that's Oregon. And I think the visit scoreboard still shows Kelee showing up for I think he was there for the cookout, which I call the slip and slide now. I don't know what you refer to it as, but he was there for that. He was there for the scavenger hunt. Remember the viral pictures with him and the pet python of the Georgia program, Sunshine. He was there for, obviously, G-Day. He was there for a junior day earlier this year. I think the visit trail is still pretty strong for Kelee Ringo, provided, Brandon, he makes an official visit sometime in December as well.
So Light Dog 1968 says it's really Noah Sewell, the one that we need right now. He's meaning Georgia. Luis Herrera also pointing out that Sewell plays in the state championship game this week, which is Thursday morning, I believe.
I believe
correct?
he plays tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, so with that in mind, Kendall Milton was also asked by you, hey, what would Noah Sewell mean for this program? So if you're a dog fan that likes Milton and you're a dog fan that hopes for Sewell, here is Milton talking about Sewell. You don't get much better than that.
It would be great having a guy like that, on your team. It just makes everybody get better every day. Iron sharpens iron, so we're just battling every day, trying to get better. So that would help us, become a better team and help us get to a national championship.
It's kind of funny. I have a tendency to think of these guys all next door neighbors because they're all West Coast type guys. But the truth is, Orem, Utah, and Arizona, and Fresno, California aren't necessarily all that close. Obviously, I'm joking when I say that. But how well does Milton know these guys? The west of the Mississippi recruits here. How much of a relationship do these guys have formed with each other?
Well, I think Ringo didn't make the opening, and then Kendall didn't go to the Rivals 5-Star Challenge like Noah and Kelee did, but with a lot of these guys, they've seen each other coming up. I think the interesting part is this year for Georgia fans, for a dutiful reporter like myself that's going to be out there for the All-American Bowl out in Texas. I think there's going to be Kimber is on the East team and Ratledge is on the East team, but then you've got potential Bulldogs in potential Bulldogs in Kelee Ringo, Noah Sewell, and then obviously Kendall Milton, who is a Bulldog on the West team this year. When we saw those pictures of him in his All-American jersey, I had a little mind freeze because I was like, what's wrong with that jersey? Because all the East team wears the black jerseys traditionally every year, and the West team wears the white.
Yeah.
Kendall was in the white uniform, the white togs there. So different recruiting classes. What we said all along is there's only going to be about 5 or 6 names total from the state of Georgia in this 2020 class.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see, and we'll kind of figure out where all these guys fit into the top targets here as a part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. Before we get to that, though, let me give you a quick message from my friends at Kroger. Kroger's introducing free pickup here right in time for a busy holiday season. Of course, let's face it, this time of year, everybody wants more of their time back. They want to save money, and Kroger's already been great at that, but now helping you save time as well. You can get free pickup when you shop on the Kroger app or on the website. You place your order, and then you pick it up right there in person. It's all free pickup just in time for the holiday season there with you, with our friends at Kroger. All right, with that in mind, let's do top targets. And by the way, later on, we'll hear from another big name in the 2020 class for Georgia. We'll hear from Theo Johnson on today's show. But before that, it's top targets here, courtesy of our friends at Kroger. And Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. And Kelee Ringo, Noah Sewell, they've been the top 2 names here for quite some time, and it remains that way again with Ringo at number 1 and also Noah Sewell coming in there at number 2 on this list right now. These 2 big defensive names, Jeff, would go a long way towards really, I just think, establishing the kind of dominant defense that Georgia's shown this year and wants to keep showing in future years as well.
Yeah, I think the term most folks on the Dog Nation forum always refer to is, we're going to kind of get brisk with our top targets this week because we got a busy show. But Sewell and Ringo, man, that would just be the salivating defense potential for Georgia, because if you could combine, these guys are freaks. I mean, Kelee Ringo is only 17 years old. He's about 205 pounds, 6 feet 2 inches. He's running a 4.3. You've got Noah Sewell, who just moves like a wide receiver at 265 pounds. I bet when he gets into a weight program, a great weight program in college, he's going to shift that weight around. He's going to be around 245, 255, and be a step faster. Can you imagine that? Those 2 guys, if you could get Georgia fan, if you could just picture them on the same defense with guys like, I don't know, maybe an Eric Stokes, but definitely Nakobe Dean, Trayvon Walker, Tyreek Stevenson, Nolan Smith. That's a good stuff right there.
Jimmy Miller in our Facebook comment section says, we need both. Obviously, that would sound good to a lot of Georgia fans, myself included. But how about we keep it going with maybe another name to add with those, Jordan Burch. Big news from Burch, the defensive lineman out of Columbia, South Carolina, as he let it be known on Twitter this week that he's committing on December 19th, second day of the early signing period, and a tough cookie to crack here, if that's the right cliched analogy to use. Just a guy that does not tip his hand a whole lot. My assumption is he's not going to South Carolina, his hometown team, but ultimately, even that's a bit of a leap of faith on my part to even say that. Yeah,
but, you say doesn't tip his hand. I mean, he doesn't even put his hands out offering up anything. If I was going to be able to recite all the interviews that Jordan Burch has given a reporter over the last, 4 to 6 months, we wouldn't need a whole lot of time on Before the Hedges to put together a transcript or an audio breakdown of all that. He simply does no media. Very interesting how I think the way his recruiting is going, Brandon, he's going to do it on the second day of the early signing period, not the first day. And, you know, he's supposed to be appearing at the Under Armour All-American game this year, too. He will be because he's one of the guys drafting for each team. But I wonder if even a guy like Jordan Burch is so, like, you know, media is kind of not his thing. I wonder even if his decision is made and he's signed, whether he's going to be a willing participant in a lot of interviews in Orlando as well.
I don't mean to muddy the waters here, but is there a chance he pulls a Tyreek Stevenson, where we were kind of left the day of Stevenson's situation before the All-Star game wondering, there was a tweet from him, is he going to announce? And come to find out he's just signing with the rest of his teammates there, but not making an announcement. Do you think that Burch will actually speak on what it is that he does, or is this just a signing thing for him and we don't actually hear the school that he's going to until he gets to the All-American game?
No, I think when you put a tweet out that says you're committing, well, then the commitment will have to actually be made publicly. I think, you know, Hammond School is a private school, Brandon. Those schools like exposure. They like the marketing vehicle of having a big-time athlete sign somewhere, and that'll be a commercial on the 6 and 11 o'clock news around Columbia when he makes his decision. And I would imagine there will be some sort of signing ceremony there on December the 19th out of Columbia, South Carolina.
How about name number 4 in our top targets for the class of 2020 here before the Hedges presented by Kroger? And it is Darnell Washington, the tight end out of Las Vegas. Anything new on the Washington front?
I think he's expecting to play this week, Brandon. He's been coming off of a wrist-hand injury he suffered in the latter stages of his regular season. Still hasn't taken any more official visits other than he's taken Alabama, he's taken Georgia. I'm trying to think. He's taken some unofficial visits to Tennessee. There was the thoughts of whether he was going to take an official visit to Miami. Any other contenders getting in there for him, like Penn State? We mentioned Miami. I think he's kind of in a wait-and-see mode about any further visits. The one thing we are sure about is he will make his announcement known on January 2nd from Orlando, Florida at the Under Armour All-American game.
So there you go. Next name on the list, top targets for the class of 2020, number 5, Zykevious Walker. Big weekend for him as he's slated to take an official visit to Georgia for the Texas A&M game and then announce his decision really shortly after that at some point in time the following week.
Yeah, so this was his last official. He went through a triumvirate of Florida, then Auburn, then Alabama. He was really impressed by that Alabama official visit, and now Georgia kind of gets the last at-bat there for Zykevious Walker. And he's gonna make his decision during Thanksgiving week when he's around his family. He thinks he'll have enough data there. We've written about that young man and that unique community he comes out of in Ellaville and Schley County before. But reminder, great for those people in Ellaville. They've got an early enrollee coming out of Schley County High School as well. Wherever he goes, he's going to be there in January of 2020.
How about a quick comparison, contrast maybe even between Walker and Jordan Burch? What makes them same? What makes them different?
Well, Walker's got a lot more. Walker's long. Walker's more like a Malik Herring with a little bit more length, maybe not the backflip athletic ability. Jordan Burch is just an athlete. He's a guy that, you know, you'd hate to hear this, Brandon, but potentially Jordan Burch is the type of guy that could play tight end for even at a place like Georgia.
Yeah, there you go.
He's he catches passes for his school at Hammond, plays some Wildcat quarterback. He runs the football. Nobody can really balk him in the SCISA, South Carolina Independent Schools Association. If you're looking for the type on a defensive line, Jordan Burch is more of a 9 or 10 athlete, and you know he's going to have some twitch and some bend coming off the side, whereas Zykevious Walker isn't as athletic as Jordan Burch. Reminder, Jordan Burch, he's the number 2 overall prospect in the country, and there was a minute here, maybe a cup or two of Brandon Adams coffee at his favorite breakfast food establishment, where he was the number 1 overall player in the country, ahead of Zachary Evans, and also ahead of Brian Brzee.
Chris Johnson, our Facebook comment section, wants to know how many of these top 5 guys you think Georgia can get.
Well, I think they can get all of them. I think they can get everybody on the top 10, actually. Otherwise, that wouldn't be a top target. But you know Georgia only has a certain number of commitments left. They're not going to get everybody on this top targets list as we go forward. But, you know, I think what we do every week, I want everybody to, if I could ever give a guide key to why we rate these guys the way we do for top targets, a combination of pure athletic ability. It's a combination of, that's why Noah Sewell is rated number 2, even though, you know, Brandon Adams needs another 5-star inside linebacker at Georgia, maybe not as much as any other positions at Georgia. But you keep going, though, the tight ends, like look where Jordan Burch is at on the defensive line. Look where you have 2 tight ends up early in this top targets list as well. Charlie Warner's moving on. He's graduating. Eli Wolf is a graduate transfer. They've got John Fitzpatrick, Brett Seither, and Rylan Godey. Those are the only 3 scholarship tight ends left in the program, and that's why tight end is so important down the stretch.
By the way, Devin Glenn checking in to feel pretty good about Jordan Burch eventually landing at UGA. Let's see name number 6 here, top targets of the class of 2020, Theo Johnson. We're going to hear more from Johnson here coming up in just a moment. Certainly taking visits, but as you'll hear in his own words in a moment, really wrestling with a decision right now. And I guess I'm curious, Jeff, especially coming off the heels of a Michigan official visit, that's geographically the closest school to where he lives in the province of Ontario. How much does geography matter here?
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, that's the closest one. He's only about 50 minutes away from the province of Ontario.
Or 2.5 hours once you go through customs there at the border.
But. Yeah, I can't. It still boggles my mind sometimes when we say the province of Ontario in the midst of our Georgia football recruiting show. But he's only about 50 minutes away by car, he says. But here's a curious point, Brandon, in the reporting I had here, that he's got 3 younger brothers. They'd never been to Ann Arbor before prior to this weekend. And there's a lot of opportunities for them to roll out the red carpet and host Theo Johnson at any time. But, Michigan is a school. Iowa's a school right there. I thought it was very interesting. He told me why he backed up his decision, and because he thought he had 1 or 2. And now he doesn't know, because he was trying to eliminate these schools by a negative factor, like why not that school?
Yeah.
And his mother kind of gave him some counsel. Amy Johnson gave him some counsel that said, I think you're doing this the wrong way, son. Why don't you look at them from the positives? Which school gives you the most positives?
Yeah.
And when Theo started putting that, wrapping his brain around that, he realized that he not only has 1 school he still likes and 2 schools he still likes, but he felt like he had to open it back up to all 4 schools.
So ultimately, when he didn't commit what I would have assumed would have been a Penn State decision on November the 18th, what do you think stopped him short there that day?
I just think he wasn't ready, and he kept thinking about the things he really liked about the school. And Brandon, the one thing he kept telling me was, he said he tried to look at it as what he would do if he was a normal student. If he was a normal student on that campus and he could not play football. He was just a geology major, per se. That's my term, not his. And that's what made it harder and harder, because when he did that, he had a clear school in mind. But then when he added football in it, then another school popped up and another school came out. So that's how conflicted he is right now. And as we'll hear later on in the program, it's a unique young man. I know a lot of these young men have had burdens with this decision, and they've kind of told me how tough it was. But keep your ears on the program right now, and you'll really hear the weight in his voice.
So if he's a geology major, he could have gone to Auburn, because Kirby Smart told Gus Malzahn to go kick rocks on Saturday.
These just come to you, don't they?
Just right off the top of my head, folks.
I'm surprised it wasn't a Florida joke.
I'm a professional. We're just coming off the Auburn game. Hey, next name, and by the way, we'll hear more from Theo Johnson in a moment. Ooh, I like to see arrows up. That makes me feel good on a day like this. 4-star wide receiver Arian Smith from Lakeland, Florida, recently tweeted out that he's, much like Theo Johnson, he's wrestling with his decision right now there as well. Boy, Jeff, when you look at the way, friends can be honest, when you look at the way the passing game is struggling for Georgia, hard not to want to collect as many playmaking offensive guys as you can get. Theo would be one of those guys. Arian Smith would be one of those guys. I think it's a tough recruitment for Georgian Smith. I certainly, just based on my assumption, don't necessarily consider the Georgia the leader here. But boy, I sure would like to see the Dogs get involved with Arian Smith heavy down the stretch. And by the way, the stretch for Smith, as you told us on Dog Nation Daily this week, is actually going to stretch beyond December.
I'm sure you love hearing that, Brandon. You got to have some programming in the month of January, right?
Listen, content. Content is king, y'all.
But it's Oklahoma, it's Alabama, it's Clemson, and Georgia. Those are the schools that are really, I guess, in the the pie or the circumference there for Arian Smith. And I'm going to ask you a question, Brandon.
All right.
Let's do Wayne's World style. Darnell Washington ends up being a Bulldog. Theo Johnson ends up being a Bulldog. Corey Wren ends up being a Bulldog. And Arian Smith ends up being a Bulldog.
Yeah.
One of those guys is already committed, but the other pieces come together. What will the Georgia offense, in your mind's eye, still need as far as playmakers? Or will that have been just about a bang up of a job as Georgia could have done addressing weaknesses in this offense?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you're throwing a lot of bodies at the problem, I think, and we're going to hear Theo Johnson going to say this a little bit later on. There's a certain trust factor that you have to have with the coaches that they're actually going to use the talent that they have. Because, listen, I have long since given up on complaining with the Georgia offense. I'm just sort of ready to let this season play out and whatever happens, there's a chance that even with kind of a less than stellar offense, Georgia may still win the national championship this season. But honesty compels you to admit they've essentially held Demetrius Robertson hostage the last 2 years. The only one that can use his talent is Georgia, and Georgia's not choosing to use that. So, I mean, listen, I hope that Arian Smith and all these guys come, but in terms of how they'll be used when they get to Georgia, I think you're justified in being skeptical of that right now.
Well, especially, I think the thing with D-Rob is I was always the adjustment to the Georgia offense, the blocking scheme. And then last year, even when he was healthy, he had guys like J.J. Holloman, and he had Riley Ridley and Mecole Hardman, Terry Godwin ahead of him. And this year, he started to show some flashes. I want everybody to go back to your DVR copies of that Vanderbilt game, especially those first 6 or 7 drives, and go, if you want to talk about salivating or mouth-watering, that was a different Georgia offense. That was when Demetrius Robertson and Kyrus Jackson were both healthy. I don't think enough folks think about that in terms of Georgia, where it lost its way to have a stellar offense in 2019.
Yeah, so I mean, I couldn't begin to tell you why they didn't keep that going for the entirety of the year. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, obviously you'd love the idea of adding these bodies into the discussion, and then you have to sort of put some trust into the coaching staff. They're going to really come up with an effective game plan to use them and not shrug their shoulders during a press conference and say wide receivers have got to get open. But that is probably a different story for a different day. Next name on our list of top targets for the class of 2020. How about C.J. Stroud, the quarterback out of the state of California? One of those guys that kind of late in the process here has a lot of interest sort of centered around his name.
Nation's number 3 pro-style quarterback. He's now 2 spots ahead of Carson Beck. Georgia would certainly love to add 2 quarterbacks in this class, especially if Mr. Fromm takes his talents to the NFL. C.J. Stroud is expected to be in Athens this weekend for an unofficial visit for the Texas A&M game, and then another official visit will come later. And Brandon will nod his head as I say more potential content for him in January is C.J. Stroud, which is expected to be an Ohio State lean right now. You hear that school a lot with C.J. Stroud in the industry. He's another guy that's not going to make up his mind anytime soon, and that might be great for Georgia because if Jake Fromm comes back, then the need to bring in a C.J. Stroud lessens. But if Jake Fromm doesn't come back, then the need to get more scholarship quarterbacks on deck is a big priority. And the fact that C.J. Stroud might want to take things to February, I think that's a win-win for all parties.
So we'll follow that story as it continues to develop. One of our top targets for sure. I guess we're going to have I know by the time we shift past the early signing date, we'll have 2021 top targets. I guess we'll have to have some leftover top targets, maybe some holiday leftovers. Maybe that'll be the theme there on that. But keeping it going, top targets for right now, going past C.J. Stroud, the quarterback, let's talk Dante Manning, the cornerback out of Kansas City. Interesting to see Stroud and Smith moving up and Manning moving down. What's that related to?
Well, Manning just he took an official visit again to Oregon. Sounds like he really enjoyed that one. Oregon and Georgia still kind of doing that rock'em sock'em robots for a lot of big players in this class, and Manning still needs to visit Georgia. His final official visit now is in December when he will visit Georgia. Not so much as a dire need for Georgia, especially if there's any way that they can get Kelee Ringo signed at the same time.
Yeah.
Dante Manning, I think the last time he told me about it, he does plan to sign during the early period, keep it on and then let the world know during the Under Armour All-American game.
Okay.
I think that's what his current plan still is right now, but he's probably more the best player available where Georgia would have to happen if certain guys don't fall their way, but I like his game a lot. You love how that track background comes in. You love how that 10.6 speed in the 100-meter dash comes in. You love how he makes plays as a kick returner, as a defensive back, as an offensive weapon on his high school football team there in Raytown, Missouri. And Dante Manning is a guy that, boy, you want to talk about Georgia loading up at the end. If they could find a way to finish their DB class with Kelee Ringo, the number 1 cornerback on the country, on the 24/7 Sports composite, and then Dante Manning, who is the number 7 cornerback in the country on the composite, but the number 2 overall cornerback on the 24/7 Sports pure rating. I think, Brandon, you'd look at that haul and then you say, all right, George, that's enough. Let me back off the table Let me back off away from the table. He might get some Joey stretch pants from Friends because that would be enough defensive backs for you in this class.
That'd be pretty impressive for sure there. By the way, Justin Brooks in our Facebook comment section, pretty good take from him, going back to one of our previous names, says he likes C.J. Stroud better than Caleb Williams, which is a pretty bold statement here right now, given the fact that on this show and around Dog Nation, we're all pretty big fans of Caleb Williams as a player. But our final name on our top targets here, the top 10 closes out. Mikey Henderson Jr., we'll call him a tight end, Oklahoma commit out of Texas. He's played some quarterback for his high school team. Another guy that's kind of dropping down the list right now.
I just kind of position him as a best player available as well left for the class because, folks, and you'll notice we got top targets this week, and there'll be a reason why people will see in our online chatter, they'll go, Jeff, what are you doing dropping Brandon? Jeff, what are you doing, Hedges, dropping Mikey Henderson to number 10? Well, I'm going to tease you. He makes a play in the state playoffs in Texas that makes you think his name needs to be up a lot higher in the board. And, Brandon, we've reached the point in the season where I'm like, we just have 10.
That's it.
We just have 10 top
So no
targets.
second running back for right now then?
Not for right now. There's always potential to be a second running back to be named later under the Christmas tree. Mm-hmm. But right now, when you look at top targets and you see how these guys are right now, I think those are the guys where, if we want to call them top targets, those are the ones that Georgia should prioritize and are prioritizing down the stretch.
Greg Rosenberg says, I'm curious what happened to Zachary Evans. He went from top target to no target really, really quickly. Sometimes I'll leave my opinion out of this discussion, but obviously Evans is one of those guys that you've heard connected to schools like LSU a lot more recently, and frankly a lot less in Georgia now for quite some time, after it seemed like he was on the verge of a UGA commit, or at least that was what the online chatter was. Well, that dissolved pretty fast.
I do feel that was reality, but like we had
sometimes I wonder if that wasn't an intentional disinformation campaign.
Well,
not on the part of the industry, on the part of somebody seemed to want that out there.
Well, there is also the off-the-field concern that he had to deal with as well, which might have been a red flag for certain schools.
So we'll obviously follow whatever happens with Georgia potentially getting a second running back at some point in time, but it does not appear right now that's going to be Zachary Evans. But here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, by the way, let me also give a quick shout-out here to really an awesome opportunity. You know, so many people have not just like holiday parties this time of year with like your family and friends, but a lot of work type stuff. One of the great things you can do for something like that is one of these party platters from Kroger. Now, by the way, party platter is one of those things like unique New York that you can kind of say is like a tongue twister to get your tongue ready for a broadcast. But a party platter from Kroger. Now, listen to this. You got a shrimp platter or a veggie tray or a meat and cheese tray, and they all just start at $19.99. So it's a great, great offer. You can order online, over the phone. You can stop by and say hello to someone at the Kroger Deli at the Kroger right there near you, and they can really help you kind of get back in the party and not have to spend the entire time, kind of working. The Kroger party trays take really good care of you when it comes to stuff like that. So online at Kroger.com, in-store at the deli, or you can give them a call there as well. Great savings starting at just $19.99. All right, so one of the names that was in our top targets list was the four-star tight end Theo Johnson, who is coming up on a decision here at some point, but as Johnson has said, he's really wrestling with that decision right now. And it's pretty obvious who kind of which one of these is not like the other school in this recruitment is. It's Georgia from the SEC. Obviously, other than that, you're talking about Iowa, you're talking about Michigan, you're talking about Penn State, you're talking about Big Ten schools with a real history of using tight ends, of having Mackey Award winners and kind of everything else. And at Georgia, well, the pitch is that they're about to become that if Theo Johnson will come to UGA. Here's what Theo said about that.
I had a really good experience at Georgia, and every time I've been there, I've really enjoyed myself, and I just really enjoyed Georgia, the school itself, just the overall feel of just down south. I just really liked, it down there, and I know that they haven't been able to do certain things with the tight ends because of they don't have the personnel right now and stuff. So I just think the big thing with Georgia, certain schools have proven use of the tight ends and stuff like that. But the thing that interests me with Georgia and keeps me thinking about them is just the possibility to kind of change the tight end room, change it to where Georgia is starting to use tight ends more as a school, and some of the things that people say about other schools' tight ends, they start to say about Georgia tight ends. And that's something that definitely interests me about Georgia, to kind of change the culture and change what people think about the tight ends coming out of there.
It's really funny. When you hear Johnson talk, it's easy to seemingly hear every negative message he's ever gotten from Georgia coming out in what he says, and what Georgia's sales pitch to him obviously is. He references Georgia doesn't throw the ball to the tight end very much. You better believe that's what Michigan has told him. That's what, Penn State has told him. I don't know how much negative recruiting Iowa's doing. They seem too nice for that. But Josh Gaddis at Michigan and James Franklin at Penn State, I'm pretty sure they're doing some negative recruiting. It's easy to hear that coming out, but he also says, hey, but listen, it's appealing to me to change the culture. It's appealing to me to be the guy that, changes the game and sets up Georgia as kind of a tight end university type school, which is pretty obviously the counterbalance recruiting message that Georgia seems to be giving to him. To me, it's easy to hear all those messages in what Theo Johnson says there.
Yeah, you just have me laughing there about Iowa and negative recruiting.
I just can't see Iowa City being a negative recruiting place.
Iowa would say something like, you don't really look good in red. And
yeah.
I think you run better in cold weather than warm weather.
Michigan and Penn State, I feel like they could roll up their sleeves and do a little SEC-style negative recruiting if they needed to. Iowa, I think they're just real willing to let the chips fall where they may.
So everybody check those highlights about Theo. I still contend that he has as much upside as any tight end in the class of 2020. Especially because he doesn't benefit from having 4 downs or at least 3 downs to operate in Canadian high school football. Look at the length of that field. Look at the width of that field. Look at how you see the end zone right in the middle of the goal line, and they have 20-yard end zones to deal with. Guys are in motion left and right. Just a different league right there. And, that's the main thing is Georgia. Theo was telling me like their city championship, Brandon, got postponed because there was slush and snow on the field. The field was deemed unplayable. And they had to basically go high knees, like you're in the ocean, to try and figure out a way to practice in that stuff. But Theo, he's conflicted. That's certainly the case.
We'll hear more from him on that. One more thing from him on the subject of Georgia having not used the tight ends very much. He's pretty clear that Todd Hartley says that's going to change. I want you to listen to this very carefully. Now, a weird phone connection with Theo, so this doesn't sound the same as the other clips do, but it's really important that you listen in closely to hear what he says here. He goes into detail about how when a coach says something to you that you haven't seen on the field with your own eyes, as a recruit, that puts you in an interesting situation. And Theo's honesty here, I think, is incredibly refreshing. Take a listen to Theo Johnson discussing the message from UGA and, frankly, other schools as well.
It would definitely take a leap of faith just because, a lot of people throughout the process, we're going to start doing this or start doing that. Like everybody says, don't really listen to that. It's just recruiting talk and stuff. I really trust Coach Hartley and stuff, and it would take just the trust that we've built and trusting that the relationship that we have, Coach Hartley, everything that he's been telling me this whole time through this process is going to hold up when I actually get there.
I'm really glad to hear Theo say what he says there, because I think that articulates the feeling that a lot of recruits are dealing with this time of year, not just Theo Johnson, but really everyone, when he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the essential gist of it all, Georgia has not thrown to the tight ends a lot, but Todd Hartley says, yeah, but when you get here, we're about to. When you get here, we're going to do something different with you than we've done with every tight end. And obviously, Theo alludes to, a lot of coaches are telling you don't believe that. Don't believe that it's all going to change once you're on campus, that things are going to be different. He says, and I got a great relationship with Todd Hartley. That's what Theo says. But it takes a leap of faith, and he uses the word trust. Leap of faith and trust that Georgia really will throw to him if he comes here. I think that's a fascinating assessment of the situation from Johnson. I think it's uncharacteristic maturity for someone who's still in high school, and I think that does make the decision tough, and I'm glad that he articulated the way that he did, because I think that wide receivers who potentially would come to Georgia have to kind of be dealing with the same thing.
Yeah, refreshingly candid, I think, is the way to describe that. Theo is a really good kid, but there's either fact or fiction there, because I was always been the guy that when everybody complains about Georgia not throwing the ball to the tight end enough, and I would have the pushback of, well, when you're a play caller and you're a quarterback, you want to put the ball in the hands of your best athlete. So was Isaac Nada or was Charlie Warner a better athlete than Mecole Hardman or Riley Ridley or DeAndre Swift or Sony Michel? I always thought that those guys were the ones you wanted to prioritize the balls and the touches to. But make no mistake about it, if Georgia does bring a Theo Johnson or a Darnell Washington or both of those guys into the mix, when that guy's ready to roll, when he knows the offense, when he's got some strength and conditioning under his belt, got some weight on him, and when they're ready for the SEC, which might be sooner rather than later, I think those tight ends, Brandon, in my mind's eye, will become some of the best athletes on the Georgia offense and some of the best athletes in the SEC. You got old school Jeff over here. I don't know how Brandon feels, but I've always felt that the tight end, especially guys like these two, the guys that can run, that can block, that can catch, that can make moves and shimmy shakes like a receiver down the field. I've always thought the tight end position are the best athletes on the field, especially guys like Washington and Theo, because they're asked to do so much. They're asked to act like an offensive tackle during run plays on the edge, and then they're asked to make catches like a wide receiver over the middle or on 9 routes or complicated pass routes, not stop routes. They're asked to do it all, and those two guys, if Theo Johnson hits his potential in college, he would be one of the best athletes on any offense in college football.
Cassie Belleville says Eli Wolf doesn't have many receptions, but he's had 2 really big plays. The touchdown on Saturday, obviously, in the third down conversion that ended the game against Florida. Cassie says with an elite tight end, I think we would definitely use them more. So maybe the presence of Wolf, the fact that Georgia has thrown to him in some key spots, maybe that would influence a guy like Theo Johnson.
So I got a theory, Brandon. Poke a hole in this, if you will, because I know you're prone to do so. Let's say Georgia's tight ends only have, even with Darnell and Theo, in that projected potential world of Georgia football and their offense, I think maybe they might only still have 25, 30 catches a year. The thing is, they might have 8 or 9 touchdowns, 9 or 10 or 12 touchdowns.
That would be more than any Georgia player has had the entirety of Kirby Smart's career.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But what I think is the best benefits for Georgia future, in ghosts of Kirby Smart's offense future, maybe the tight end is not going to catch 40, 50 balls like they're going to do in Michigan and Penn State and Iowa. But maybe they catch about 25 or 30, but that includes 8 to 10 touchdowns. And to me, Georgia people, I don't know what you think about it, but Georgia getting 8 to 10 touchdowns or even 6, 7, 8 touchdowns out of a single tight end in Athens, to me, that's utilizing the tight end in a way that Georgia never has before.
But to be fair, though, the current issue is not Georgia's lack of utility for its tight ends. The fact it doesn't throw the ball very well to anyone right now. I mean, I'm not trying to be snarky. I'm just trying to be honest with you that no one in this current Georgia offense is set up to get 10 touchdowns. I mean, so, the thing that if you're an elite tight end prospect like Theo and Darnell, the thing you have to wrestle with is not how are they going to use the tight ends, but are they going to be throwing the ball to anyone? Because, right now, there's just no doubt that Georgia's not really throwing it to anyone with great regularity.
What was your vectors for success in 2019 that somebody needed to be around 800 yards receiving by now and 8 touchdowns? And I think Cager's at 450 and 4.
And he's obviously missed some games there, but if you look at the college football playoff, the 5-year history, you see 900-plus yard receivers on each and every team that's won the national championship. And I don't even want to relitigate this because we've obviously been through it so much. But the issue for anybody that's going to come into Georgia is it going to change when I'm there? Are they going to suddenly start throwing the ball more, or am I going to get blamed for not getting open for the reason why they're not throwing the ball?
Interesting tight end points. So we got one more clip from Theo as well.
Yeah, we do. Obviously, Johnson talking about just how difficult the overall decision is for all the reasons that he's wrestling with. Here's what Theo had to say about that.
I've thought about this every single hour of the day for the last 2.5 years. I've thought about this every single day, and I just can't. I can't focus. I'll try and think of something else, and I just can't because I just know how much of an impact this decision is going to have on my whole life. I just can't not think about it, and it's been really, very just taxing on me. The one thing that kind of takes my mind off of things is playing football and working out and doing stuff like that. But when I'm just sitting around in class or something, it's pretty tough, very hard, and it's been rough.
I really like this young man. I love the way that he's willing to be honest about the decision that he's facing right now. And honestly, wherever he ends up, I'm going to root for him to have a successful college career. But obviously, I would love for that to be at the University of Georgia because I think that Georgia really needs a guy who does what Theo does. Even though he's the 4-star and Darnell's the 5-star, based on what I've seen from them on film, I'm not quite so sure that Theo isn't the more polished of the two.
Yeah, I would agree. And both of these guys have ginormous upside. I've said, I've wrote on the pages of DogNation.com that I think, throw Gilbert in there as well. And I think all 3 of those young men are going to be top 40, top 45 picks in the NFL draft, no matter which offensive system and which tight end factory or non-tight end factory they come out of. These guys are just so talented. You listen to the talent evaluators at the opening finals this year, and they basically shake their head. They've never had the combination of player, frame, ball skills, speed, athleticism as all those tight ends have. I mean, Notre Dame's even getting 2 more as well. Great tight ends in this country in this 2020 class. And, man, there's just so much honesty there from Theo, and you feel it. That's one of the things I wanted to make sure, Brandon, we wrote about it. I hope you guys checked out that story. But that is a very conflicted young man, because this is one thing he said, Brandon. He said, everybody comes at me with that, and these are all great choices. Just these are all, you're going to be great at either one of them. He said, people think I can just put them all into a hat and just pull one out and I'll be great there. He says, yeah, I think I can, but I want to make the best choice, the most perfect choice, the right choice. And that is why he knows everything about it. He knows negative recruiting. He knows it's not pretty girls. He knows it's not facilities. It's not cool locker rooms. It's not swag. It's not hype videos. He knows what's real and what's not real. He knows recruiting. He's seen everything. He's been exposed to everything, and I think he gets recruiting out of Canada more than some people right here in the state of Georgia and Atlanta get recruiting, because he's been exposed to so much. But he just doesn't know yet, and that's just tough for a young man that's right now just second guessing himself a lot. He took the Michigan official visit. Here's what's next. He said, I'm going to try and not do anything with my recruiting, not obsess about it, not get the legal pad out, not PowerPoint it with pros and minuses. He's going to try and quit recruiting cold turkey for about 5 or 6 days. And then he's going to get back into it, and he's going to immerse himself in it again. And he's like, he knows he's not going to go any further than December the 18th, because he probably can't strain the mental burden of it. But then if it comes, and he'll let the world know, because he is really happy. When he knows, he will be more than happy and overjoyed to let the world know.
You ready for the holidays? If you aren't, Kroger can help you get ready for the holidays when you can save on holiday home decor, gift cards, gift wrapping, essentials, toys, so much more. You can start saving upwards of 30% off when you shop at your local Kroger store. Okay, here's what's to come today on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. We'll kind of check in on some of the top names from the 2020 class, including a little bit more information on what was a very interesting week for Georgia running back commit Kendall Milton. Jeff will share his weekly six-pack when it comes to trivia questions. He'll try to stump us. That's all on the way on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger here today. But before that, one of the big names to know for the class of 2021 is Barrett Carter, a linebacker from North Gwinnett, one of the top programs in the metro Atlanta area, and really the state overall. An incredibly talented team, and Carter's one of the ways in which that's true. His talent obviously shines through here during his junior season. How does he feel about his upcoming recruiting decision, kind of as the 2021 class gets ready to take center stage in this process? Well, he spoke to Jeff Sintel about that subject and a whole lot more. Here is Jeff with Barrett Carter as a part of Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
You were at Georgia for the Notre Dame game.
Yes, sir.
Does that still resonate for you? Is that something, like when you think about that game, what comes to your mind?
Really what comes to my mind, just how welcoming the staff was, and how the fourth quarter light show, that was amazing. I've never seen anything like that, and just to see Georgia come out with the win, that was huge. So it was a great game to go to, and I'm glad I win.
When they recruit you, what is their pitch? What are they telling you? What's the message?
They're just telling me that I'm wanted here, and that I will come in early, making an impact for them. So that's huge to me. And they said that I will love it there in Athens. So, yeah.
So you grew up a little bit. You've been in Georgia for 7 years, I guess, and you've been watching Georgia a lot. Is that one of those schools that you were always rooting for and pulling for as a kid? People call it a dream school type. How would you describe the way you felt about Georgia before this became a business and you had to look at your recruiting in a different way?
I mean, before all the recruitment, I was just watching Georgia, I was just excited to watch them all the time, and to see that they're recruiting me now, it's just huge, and it's just such a blessing. I mean, Georgia's one of they're a top school, and it's just huge to be recruited by them.
Can you put your finger on maybe the best thing you like about Georgia, about the potential fit there for you with Georgia?
Just how physical they play, because it's SEC football. Every team is dominant. In Georgia, they're just one of the more upper dominant teams. So just how physical they teach their players to play, and just the coaches. I love the coaches. They're awesome. They know how to build a player.
Barrett, it seems like you've already got this figured out. You're supposed to use football to get you where you want to go in life for your goals, because sooner or later the air runs out of the ball for everybody.
Yes, sir.
Where do you want football to take you?
I want football to take me to the highest level, which is the league, because I don't want my parents to work anymore. So I just want to make sure they're set for life. That's what I want to take out of this game.
What's your game? I see you can do outside backer, inside backer. What do you think your game actually is? What do you think is your best fit for college football?
For my best fit, I'll really just say wherever the team needs. I mean, if they need me to play inside, I can do it. Outside, I can do it. It's like nickel, safety, I can play that too because I can cover. But just wherever I'm needed, I'm willing to play because I'm versatile.
You just visited Clemson recently. I mean, everybody talks about that place and says very special things. What's your view of Clemson right now?
I mean, Clemson, they're all about family, so getting to witness that firsthand was huge to me. My parents, they loved it. They loved Death Valley. Just the stadium was awesome, and that game was exciting. And I got to go in the locker room after and see how they celebrate, so that was huge to me.
Barrett, fill in the blank for me here. The school that signs you will do what while they're recruiting you? What kind of blanks or boxes will they have to check for you to eventually sign there?
I'll say just not bug me because I'm busy. I'm a high school kid. I'm a student. I'm also an athlete, so I'm gonna be busy all the time. So just don't bug me, please. That's just how it is.
What's your GPA and coursework? What's your GPA look like? Your ACT, and what's your favorite class in school?
I have a 3.5 GPA, and I haven't taken any of the SAT or ACT. And my favorite class probably I have to say algebra too. I'm never usually a fan of math, but I like algebra. So on game day, I'm really I know you're supposed to be locked in, but I say I tend to just be relaxed. I don't want to just be 100% focused the whole day. I like to relax for a little bit. When I need to get relaxed before the game, then I am, and I'll lock in. So that's what I do.
You have a proudest moment so far as a football player or as a student? What do you think the moment that maybe made you proud, or maybe you made your folks most proud?
Getting my first offer last year, my freshman year, because I was wow, I can really go somewhere with this football stuff.
Who was your first offer?
Temple University.
That was a big day in the Carter household, right?
It was.
Barrett Carter, there's a few minutes where the North Gwinnett inside linebacker plays all over. His boys on the football team rag him incessantly when it's picture time. Hey, Barrett, thanks for a few minutes.
No problem.
Boy, a lot to like about Barrett Carter there, one of the top programs in the state of Georgia there at North Gwinnett, and a name that I'm guessing over the next year we'll talk a lot about.
Going to be on that top targets list, Brandon. That Joker's game. You worry about a young man, not worry, but be very mindful of an inside linebacker, gritty linebacker type who has great film, and then you go see him, and he has the grit to wear a pink mouthpiece at all times. Always smiling. Nice guy, but on the field, he's quite a T-Rex. He loves algebra. You bet your bottom dollar, Brandon, when that 2021 top targets list comes out, he's going to be right there in the middle of it.
It's going to be fun to talk about him a lot in the year to come. It's Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. As I said before, we'll have your comments coming up as part of our Hurry Up. We'll do six-pack and get you trivia. But for now, let's check in on the online chatter and talk about a few of the names making news this week, especially among social media. Let's go ahead and get the first one going here. Take a look. We talked about Kendall Milton before, and here's Milton doing what he's done all year long. Boy, impressive highlight there.
Yeah, he puts a little shake on there, man. He got a little DeAndre Swift dead leg on somebody right there, made the guy miss. And again, folks, the main thing you're going to hear about Kendall Milton is it's going to be very, very hard for guys to get him on the ground.
Yeah, really impressive highlight there. How about our next one here as part of our online chat? A little bit more from Kendall Milton.
Kendall Milton had a big day. He only had 9 touches in his second round sectional playoff game, Brandon, but he made the most of it. Here's touchdown number 1. That was a different angle of his other touchdown from a while back. And then let's look at touchdown number 2.
Yeah.
Good big ups to Chris Milton, father of ballers, for being the playoff videographer for a lot of folks. Look at him just striding. I still think he looks to me like a big Eddie George type, especially in high school.
Yeah, maybe a little lower center of gravity as you move towards the college game, maybe?
Yeah. He looks a little up right there, but, that's probably when he's trying to kick in those afterburners to outrun a lot of those speed guys in California that he knows he can.
Yeah, that's probably about right. How about our next one?
This is what we talked about earlier. So the young man on the left, I'm going to try and do this very succinctly, but this was a younger brother of one of Kendall Milton's teammates who played for one of the community teams that Chris Milton helped organize in the Fresno community. Well, him and his friend had a sleepover, and they're involved in this prank war. and one of his friends threw some sort of unknown liquid. Details are kind of sketchy about this right now, still under investigation. But he threw a liquid on this young man in the shower, and it resulted in third-degree burns on his chest and on his face.
Unbelievable.
And Kendall has done a lot of work in his community with youth programs and go and talk to schools, but he kind of felt led to go visit this young man in the hospital. Him and his father gathered up a Georgia hat, a Georgia backpack. He signed it, a knapsack, and then he brought some of those Georgia those wristbands that the kids all get when they visit the school. And they visited the young man in his hospital, and it was kind of weird because Kendall was going there to cheer that young man up, and yet that young man's outlook kind of cheered him up a little bit. Now, again, things are still going on. It's a very unfortunate situation, but look at Kendall trying to make the best of it and kind of use his semi-fame in Fresno a little bit to reach out and help this young man. And here's the happy ending, Brandon, of sorts. On Friday, that young man, as evidenced by that picture right there, came and visited the Clovis, California area, the Buchanan High School playoff game, which they won 43-7, thanks to 120 yards on 9 carries and 2 scores from Kendall Milton. But he came to that game wearing the Georgia G. So it looks like Kendall Milton's already recruited another dog fan out there in Fresno as well.
Well, that's great to see. As we continue our online chatter, here's part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. Big news here in the 2021 5-star quarterback.
LSU game November the 30th right there, and that's going to be LSU and Texas A&M. Maybe there'll be little bits and pieces left of the Texas A&M football team after the Georgia Bulldogs get through with them this weekend. I always try to make sure I get a Brandon to have a little Master of the Universe laugh from him right there, but going to see LSU, Brandon. Let's make no mistake about it. LSU's throwing the ball around, making plays, getting Heisman contenders out of transfer quarterbacks, and Caleb Williams is the #1 dual threat quarterback, a 5-star in the country for 2021 for a reason. Caleb Williams, is definitely thinking about those LSU Tigers, along with the Georgia Bulldogs, the Clemson Tigers, and the Stanford Cardinal, and the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, it's obviously that the big passing game success that LSU has had has created quite a brand for them when it comes to recruiting, and that's going to be an issue for Georgia to deal with.
One other thing, you might not want to hear, or you might want to hear, Brandon, his season is over. Good counsel absolutely kind of upset Gonzaga in the Catholic League playoffs there in D.C. Reminder, Caleb wasn't going to make a commitment while he was inside of his junior season or before his junior season, so now his junior season is over. And as soon as he gets the notion to make his commitment to the school he thinks is the best fit for his future, he's now able to do so.
All right, so we'll see how that plays out, and that'll be one to watch as we head through the offseason for sure. How about our next piece of online chatter? Theo Johnson enjoying himself in Ann Arbor, it would appear.
Yeah, look at that alternate uniform. I haven't seen that Michigan uniform too much.
Maybe they're like Georgia. Maybe they only show these alternate uniforms off in recruiting pictures.
Yeah, they make sure they get that Jordan brand logo on everything, though, as well. But you got the Hail sign. Somebody did an edit there as well. And
there's a chance, though, that Theo Johnson would have been more impressed by a Vince Carter brand as opposed to a Jordan brand. Great Canadian basketball players, former Toronto Raptor star.
Yeah.
Maybe Theo's not as impressed by Jordan. Maybe he likes one of the former Raptors,
and
Damon Stoudemire or something like that.
One of the thing about the other thing about that, I know we've cleared it up in certain platforms, but maybe not on this platform. Theo is so mentally exhausted by this recruiting and figuring out which one of the 4 schools he's going to go to. Remember, he'd given us the nugget that he might want to check out Alabama for the Alabama-Auburn game for the Iron Bowl. He wants no part of that. Okay. He doesn't want to add another school to the matrix, so to speak, to figure that out. So he's not complicating his life by adding another official visit. He told me that the Michigan official visit, and it wasn't official, was going to be his final official visit. Now he's just got to get to the figuring out stage.
All right, there you go. Anything else?
Got another one. Dante Manning, we mentioned him earlier. That's another Oregon Duck right there. He had a great, look at that. Listen to that, Brandon. Had an amazing OV in Eugene this past weekend. Loved the program, but loved the people supporting the program even more. 1,509 miles away from home, and it still felt like a home.
Okay.
Can't wait to get back.
That's nice.
If he's not can't wait to get back, that must mean he's probably thinking about an unofficial visit potentially in the month of December.
You know, Cristobal is, I think, a really good recruiter. Oregon's been one of these schools that has shown up in top 3s and top 5s for like 1,000 years. You know, everybody's considered Oregon. People like taking visits to Oregon. But for the most part, one of the dirty secrets in recruiting is Oregon hasn't necessarily won a lot of those recruiting battles. But with Cristobal kind of at the helm there, it certainly looks like they're in a lot bigger and better position to win a lot of those recruiting battles going forward.
Yeah, they got one of those big recruits in the 2018 class was Penei Sewell, who's rated just as highly as Andrew Thomas's folks on the NFL draft boards, and he's only a sophomore.
Yeah.
Graded out as well. Some of those folks that do that fine market pro football focus that look up everything and grade every inch and iota of film they possibly can.
I was thinking about Thibodeau, the kid they beat out LSU for.
Yeah, that's one, Thibodeau. And then they also got a name. Let me give you a name from the past. Excuse me. What about Avante Williams? Remember him?
Yeah, I do.
Currently, everybody in the world thought he'd be decommitted and thinking locally again by now. Right now, still currently committed to Oregon.
Lord, how many defensive backs are they trying to sign? They must really need defensive backs. I feel like every defensive back we discuss has been seemingly in the mix there for that. More online chatter?
Got another one. Look at this one, Brandon. Mikey Henderson. Look at this now. First of all,
nice catch.
That was 3-man coverage.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the defensive back there, going back to your coordinator or defensive backs coach and letting a 3-man bracket, letting this guy get loose for a touchdown?
That's pretty impressive.
First of all, the quarterback's going to have to go back to the sideline and I say, I know I told you to just throw it up to Mikey whenever, but not in front of 3 dudes right there. And, what's the term? Randy Moss. Those young men.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. That's a pretty good athlete there.
And that athlete is currently residing at number 10 on the top targets list for 2019.
That is indeed true.
One more, 2020 and in the year 2019.
The reason why I say that is because that always gets me confused as well.
Yeah, 2020. Look at there. There's C.J. Stroud. You get another look at that. The battle group got under the radar. Great. They do some great work, especially great video work at all times. But there's him on the run, slinging that ball around. Not a big quarterback. Carson's about 6'4" and about 230. This guy's about 6'2" and a half, maybe about 200 pounds already.
Looks like a pretty classic pocket passer. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely fair to say. He's definitely not a burner. Reminder, folks, highest rated quarterback uncommitted left in the country. That's C.J. Stroud, and he also won the Elite 11 finals as the Elite 11 MVP out there at the opening.
Boy, it's really interesting that more quarterbacks don't leave themselves on the board for later, because the ones that do seem to end up having a pretty interesting recruitment where you get a lot of interest from schools late, pretty strong push. You get to be kind of in control of your own situation a bit. I'm surprised more guys don't choose to go the C.J. Stroud route.
Well, it's because they get so much pressure, Brandon, from the schools. They want to lock down their anchored quarterback that will attract the wide receivers and the linemen and the running backs to the class. And sometimes they just want to slot in those elite guys and be that guy for the class. But the way C.J. Stroud's doing it, in combination with his late bloomer status in this 2020 recruiting cycle, is giving them the opportunity to just kind of pick and choose and figure out what his best fit is. He can look at guys going pro, he can look at coaching changes, and he can just figure it out like, hey, I'm going to do me first before I start worrying about making a decision that the schools want me to make as early as possible. Again, teams I think that will be in it till the very end for C.J. Stroud. You got Ohio State there. You got Georgia there. Georgia's really trying to get in that door. And again, we feel he will be an unofficial visitor this weekend for the Texas A&M game when he's watching those footballs just fly around there in that football game.
Exactly. That's our online chatter here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. And now we turn our attention to our six-pack as Jeff tries to stump us with some trivia questions.
You ready for this, Brandon?
I am ready for this.
This is the first ever six-pack trivia on Texas A&M in the history.
That's right, exactly. Not a lot of backstory between these two teams, so be interesting to see the six we come up with.
All right, folks, go ahead and wager in on YouTube and Facebook. Go ahead and call your shot about whether you're going to go 3 for 6, 4 for 6, 5 for 6. Brandon, what are you going to do? Call your shot.
I'm going to go 4 for 6 at least.
4 for 6.
I'm going to try to have a winning record.
4 for 6. Look at this right now. Which one of these elements is not true about the Georgia-Texas A&M head-to-head comparison? A, Texas A&M leads the all-time series with Georgia. Again, this is not true. The Aggies have more conference and national titles than Georgia. C, Jimbo Fisher makes about $1.8 million more per year than Kirby Smart.
Okay.
D, these two teams have played just twice since BA was born.
So we're looking for the one that is true or isn't true?
Which one of these is not
true? Okay, so
true?
the D is true because they played in 80 and they played in the bowl game a couple of years ago. So I believe that is true. This was a team on Georgia's 1980 national championship schedule. Texas A&M leads the all-time series with Georgia. I don't know that one way or another. That certainly could be true. Aggies have more conference and national titles. If it's conference titles, we're talking about the old Southwest Conference. So there's a chance that's true. At this point in time, Jimbo makes a lot of money, but based on Kirby's new contract, I don't think it's $1.8 million more than Kirby. So I'm going to say that it's C. That's the one that's not true. Jimbo makes a lot of money, but not $1.8 million more than Kirby.
What would be your second choice there? What would be if it's not that one? What would be your other one?
That A&M leads the all-time series. I'd say no on that because I know that Georgia's won the last two.
No need to second guess yourself, my friend. Brandon, you got that one right. On the board right now. According to the latest USA Today report, Fisher now only makes about $800,000 more per year than Kirby Smart.
There you go. All right, we're off to a rip-roaring start here.
All the rest of those were true. Played twice since BA has been born. More conference, more national titles, and so forth. Number 2.
Did Texas A&M ever win the Big 12? I don't think they did. I think that their conference titles would have been Southwest Conference.
So since BA was born, Georgia's only played Texas A&M twice. That was 1980 and 2009, 10 years ago, Brandon. So who was the last Bulldog to have a really big game against Texas A&M? There's I
love these non-specific monikers.
Really big game. The day is an unnecessary word. That probably shouldn't have been in the question, but who was the last Bulldog to have a really big day against Texas A&M? A big game, Brandon. You know what a big game sounds like. It's not 55 yards rushing. It's not 60 yards receiving. You know what a big game is.
Sure.
Which one of those guys had the last big game against Texas A&M?
All right, so it could have been Walker because they played in 80, but somebody from the bowl game had to have done something. And I'm straining my mind to think about what year that would have been. It seems like if it was Cox, it would have also been Green there as well. Rashawn Ely. I feel like a lot of it was on the ground. So I'm gonna, since we're showing AJ Green on the screen, I guess I'm gonna say AJ Green right now. Thank you for the help on that one. I'm gonna say it was AJ Green. That's me interviewing AJ Green from last year, by the way. So I'm going to say it's A.J. Green.
Brandon, you have a jacket quite like A.J. Green rocking that denim right there.
No, that's very nice. Faded denim wouldn't look quite as good on me as it does on A.J. Green. A.J. could not have been nicer, by the way. Great guy.
Hopefully A.J.'s healthy. He's probably going to get back and play this week.
Yeah, boy, he's had a rough go with that as of late.
So the correct answer, guys, you just got to trust your instincts. Anytime there's a Georgia trivia question in there and Herschel Walker's name is in there, you got to take Herschel Walker.
Okay.
He had 21 carries for 145 yards with 3 touchdowns. It is a safe bet to go to Walker with any UGA trivia question. He had a 76-yard scoring run. And, Brandon, that game against Texas A&M was the first time Sanford Stadium got to see Herschel Walker in a Georgia Bulldog uniform.
That's a good number. Yeah, that's a good number.
That was fresh off the Tennessee win and that, oh, my gosh, just a freshman. We'll go back to that one thing. Can we pull up that trivia question one more time? I was waiting for you to have some pushback on me because I called the answer and I said Herschel had 21 for 145 with 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I was waiting for snarky Brandon to say, Jeff, that was an average game for Herschel Walker.
Right, exactly. That's about right.
That's an average game for Herschel
Walker.
That's
about right. That's about right.
Correct answer is Herschel Walker.
Well, there you go.
Brandon's 1 for 2, my man. Which one of these things is not true about Texas A&M?
All right.
A, it has organized a midnight yell at the Mall of Georgia in Beaufort for Friday night.
I hope that's not true.
B, Jimbo Fisher got a 10-year, $75 million contract in 2018.
I'm pretty sure that's true.
C, Fisher now has a $60.6 million buyout.
That sounds about right.
D, the Aggies currently have a higher-rated 2020 recruiting class than Georgia.
I don't think that's true, although I haven't checked these ratings in a little while. Surely to goodness there's no midnight yell at the Mall of Georgia. Now, I've also made the push that they should change the name of College Station Road in Athens for just one day. That's usually the road that I get off the loop on to head over to Sanford Stadium.
You going to take that road this weekend?
Yeah, listen, I feel like they should have like a little fake sign hanging over it for just 1 week that says, this is not College Station Road for just 1 week. Please tell me there's no midnight yell at the Mall of Georgia. Please tell me they're not doing that.
Well, you know where College Station comes from. Old times, they had the railroads that would take you to campus, and everyone had the College Station. That was the name of the train station.
Yeah.
That's why Penn State is still in College Station, and so is Texas A&M. But Brandon, I don't know. You probably would want to. Would you want Texas A&M to have a higher rated recruiting class right now than Georgia?
Well, it's all about where you finish. I'm assuming that's not true. The honest truth is I don't remember. I haven't looked at the recruiting rankings.
All right, guys. The correct answer is D. There is going to be a midnight yell.
Yeah.
And
that's terrible.
Fisher, it's going to be at midnight. It's at the amphitheater there at the Mall of Georgia. I'm sure you'll be there broadcasting live.
Oh, my gosh.
D, the Aggies are currently number 7 overall for 2020. Georgia is sitting at number 5 overall for this cycle. Brandon currently 1 for 3.
You expecting a lot of Aggies fans in the building on Saturday? First time being in Athens?
I would expect 10,000 or so might show up there. That's going to be a nice little ticket for them.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, Georgia's one of the few schools left that really travels to away games. A&M's got a big fan base. I'm sure they have a lot of Atlanta-based alumni. I'll be interested to see how many do show up.
I mean, they're gonna. This only happens for every once in a while, man. It's
Yeah.
not like they won't catch Georgia in Sanford Stadium in their lifetime.
Jay Squilla says, "Pick it up, BA." Yeah, Jay, I probably need to do that.
Number 4, Brandon's gonna rally. True or false, Brandon? You like these? Georgia is the only league member that Texas A&M has yet to face since joining the league in 2012, and the teams won't meet again until 2024.
Seems like it could be true. I mean, obviously, I don't have memories of all of these. Obviously, all the West teams they played. They play South Carolina every year. They played Florida the first year. I remember that. I feel like I remember a Texas A&M Tennessee game. Kentucky Vanderbilt I have no memory of one way or another. But, I mean, I can just about remember them playing every East team. So I believe this has got to be about it. So that sounds about right. That sounds about right to me. I'll say true.
And, there's two parts here. They've yet to face, and then they won't face each other again until 2024.
True's the best I've got.
True's your answer, man. You got that one right. Brandon's picking it up. Now
Yeah.
he's 2-2.
Something like that.
2 for 2. Interesting. 2024, Brandon. So the folks that miss this trip for the Aggies, they won't get to see Georgia. Of course, they haven't plotted out the SEC schedule past 2025. But, every 12 years, these two teams are supposed to play a home and home. So it might be quite a while before they can yell at the Mall of Georgia at midnight again.
As a quick opinion, I love the idea of potentially seeing Georgia play Texas A&M more. But for me, that shouldn't come at the expense of changing the SEC East schedule. I believe that the SEC is the one conference that actually has distinct identities for its two divisions. I don't think any other conference has really established that. And so while I'm in favor of, if it's possible, more games against SEC West foes by adding a 9th conference game, I'm not in favor of the radical realignment you see some people pushing for it. Even Jimbo Fisher himself talked about this week, where you'd only be kind of maintaining 3 permanent opponents. I'm not in favor of that.
You like that model? You don't like that model how they have 3 or 4 permanent schools and then they rotate the rest around every year?
I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I think the East and the West still mean something. I'm also not adamantly against it either, but I'm actually a bigger fan of status quo than some people seem to be.
Moving on, number 5. Brandon is currently 2-2. What is the current blue chip ratio? We see this every week, Brandon, of football signees. That's the 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah.
And it says Georgia and Auburn folks.
Texas A&M,
That's
yeah.
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
We change it every week, but current blue chip ratio of football signees between Georgia and Texas A&M dating back to the 2016 class.
So we obviously know Georgia's 73. The A&M number is going to be pretty high. I'm tempted to even say it might be as high as 60, but I believe 55 feels like a better answer overall.
Brandon's going C, 55.
Yeah.
You want to give GB2 has B.
Yeah, that seems to be a little
50.
too low. I mean, it's close, but that seems a little bit too low. Jeffrey Carter celebrating me making a comeback. Adrian Carver says she's also 2-2 so far right now. So 55 seems about right for me. I would be tempted to go 60, but I'm going to say 55.
Correct answer, Brandon, is actually A, 45.
Okay.
The Aggies
That's much lower than I thought it would be.
The Aggies have signed up 45 blue chips, but one thing that Jimbo can do is he can recruit. 29 out of those 45 have came in the last 2 cycles, Jimbo's first 2 recruiting classes in College Station.
So that's lower than I thought it would have been. That's pretty interesting. Lower. And a lot of folks, Terry Rigdon and James Crump and others, were kind of joining me on that, although Bobby Riles got the answer correct.
Good job, Bobby Rouse. Number 6, our final one. And Brandon currently sits at 2-3. Is that correct?
That's right.
2 and 3, so we can go 3 for 3. We dumb it down. This is a Dumb and Dumber edition. Which one of these famous persons is not connected to Texas A&M or College Station?
Okay.
A, fellow amazing broadcaster in the Atlanta market, Neil Boards.
I know for a fact that he, I know he gave a commencement address there one time. I believe he went there as well.
B, Jennifer Garner.
I don't know that about her.
All those spy movies. She was.
No, I know who she is. I just don't know this one. I know who Jennifer Garner is.
Yeah, you better know who Jennifer Garner is.
I just don't know if she went to Texas A&M or not.
Lyle Lovett, the singer, at one time married to Julia
I feel
Roberts.
like he is from Texas.
D, T. Boone Pickens, who's
I feel like
connected.
he's connected to Ohio State. I mean, Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. Or E, Ross Perot.
I mean, it's got to be Pickens, right? I mean, he's the late T. Boone Pickens was an Oklahoma State guy. It's got to be him, right?
That's your final answer, sir.
I guess so.
Actually, the correct answer is E, Ross Perot. T. Boone Pickens was actually a baseball signee at Texas A&M.
Okay.
Who didn't make it, didn't graduate from A&M and wound up at Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
But the most well-known politician the six-pack staff could Google up from Texas A&M was Rick Perry.
So Ross Perot is obviously from Texas, but just not College Station.
Not College Station or Texas
Well,
A&M.
there you go.
6 for 6. Brandon goes 2 and 4. Is that correct?
Something like
Something like that.
Pretty fascinating stuff all the way around. So before the Hedges presented by Kroger, we'll kind of knock this out with, let's do 3 minutes of online, what do we call it? Hurry up. Your questions, your comments. We'll do recruiting stuff. We'll put 3 minutes in the clock. We'll kind of roll our way through it here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. We will see what the YouTube folks get going here in a moment. It always takes people a little time to get that those recruiting questions coming in. So I'll ask you one of my own, Jeff, while we wait for folks to kind of get some of theirs in right here. What do you expect the next couple of weeks to look like from a recruiting standpoint as Georgia finishes off its season? Before we start the early signing period, dominoes you expect to fall next?
Well, Zakevious Walker's decision will be made in the next couple of weeks. You would expect to see potentially the Noah Sewell decision made in the next couple of weeks. Especially after he gets through the state championship week this week.
How quickly do you think that could come after that?
2 weeks probably, something like that. It just all depends. He's going to make the decision once he takes his focus away from his team, and that's rightfully on his team right now. But he's going to probably get together with his dad and his family, and they're going to figure out, do we have to make the decision, or do we have to go check out a Tennessee? Do they have to go check out a Texas A&M? That was another school at one point. Texas A&M was rumored to get one of those early official visits from Noah Sewell as well, because he had that affinity towards playing the SEC, and that game hasn't been rescheduled yet either. That official visit hasn't been rescheduled yet as of this time. So going to see some names come off the board, some names make their decision. Within the next month, Brandon, you're going to have a Jordan Burch decision. You're going to have the first day of the early signing period as well. I guess you're asking about the near future and not the month out.
Sure, of course.
Also, you're going to see official visits taking place really in a hurry-up fashion between December the 8th for Georgia and December the 18th because Georgia will be playing in the SEC championship game.
John Williams Adams says, what's in your wallet? Obviously a reference to Jennifer Garner a little bit earlier, the commercial she's famous for. Also, our clock's not going here, so we're going to be taking comments until the end of eternity. John Williams Adams also says, medical hardship, when does that scholarship become available back to the school? I guess just the following cycle, right?
Medical hardship, what are we talking about?
If someone takes a medical hardship, how soon do you get that scholarship back?
Yeah, it's all about having guys having guys all on campus enrolled and on scholarship at the same time. One thing to mention about the story that broke earlier today is Austin Kirksey, the 3-star quarterback out of Walton High. He was a scholarship quarterback at Nevada, rated number 59 overall. Getting a little homesick. He's out in Nevada. He was an early enrollee. Folks will remember that was Dominic Blaylock's quarterback at Walton High in Marietta. He's returning. He's going to enroll at Georgia. Once he gets enrolled, whether it is for this January term or whether it is for the Maymester term, once he gets enrolled, he plans to preferred walk-on to the University of Georgia. For folks that wonder about quarterback depth for the Bulldogs, and having arms and capable arms in the number 2, number 3, number 4 spots in the depth chart, Georgia looks to have added a 3-star just as a preferred walk-on right now.
With that in mind, Mark Burton says, what do you think the percentage chance is that Jake Fromm goes to the NFL?
Oh, man, I don't do percentage chances. Percentages are also fickle because you don't know the data which will force the decision. There's certainties. I think if Jake Fromm has unfinished business left on the table at the University of Georgia, that will be the strongest reason why he would stay.
But not if he's a first-round pick.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the other.
Really, the most significant factor in this is he a first-round pick or not? If he's a first-round pick, he's probably going to leave. For me, I put the percentage chance at 50-50 just on the basis of I don't think it's more likely that he comes back. I don't think it's more likely that he goes. Now, do I think the chances are exactly 50-50? That obviously would be a long shot. But to me, it's not obvious that he'll be a first-round pick right now. He has a good chance to be, but it's not obvious that he will be. Nor is it obvious to me that he won't be. And because of that, I think it's essentially a coin flip right now.
Well, the case with Fromm is you gotta agree with me here that the better he plays down the stretch, if he leads Georgia to big things and big rings, then that enhances his stock if he makes the big throws.
But not necessarily, though, because you've got Daniel Jones starting for the Giants without having a very good college career.
Correct.
You got the kid for the Bills that didn't necessarily have a very good college career. And you got stacks on stacks of guys who played big in big games, the gamers, that didn't necessarily make the NFL. So while what the most important thing in the world to me is how he plays down the stretch, to NFL scouts, I think you can possibly say that's not really all that important to them one way or another.
Well, I think it's part of the unfinished business quotient as well. But the other thing, Brandon, I don't know if anybody plays fantasy football or follows NFL football, but check out the Lions, check out the Panthers, check out a lot of teams. They're playing some guys that weren't household names in college football. Didn't you have 15, 20 starts in college football? Well, Fromm's going to have 40 by the time he finishes his junior year. The other thing to think about here is of course, Swift might leave, Wilson might leave, Thomas might leave, Kinley might leave. That's his offensive line, so of course he's got to go. Georgia's the only school in the country that can say, all right, we can take that attrition on the offensive line and we're going to put 3 or 4 more 5-stars up on the offensive line behind him. The offensive line might be another reason why Fromm might want to stay, just for the fact that he also loves Georgia.
A couple quick things on this. James Crump says that to his stock, his injury, dropping because of injury, could change things for quarterbacks where a guy like Fromm is potentially moving up. It is fair to point out that Todd McShay, the ESPN draft analyst, does have Fromm in his top 32 players right now. So there is all of that to consider with all of this. We appreciate you being here as a part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. I hope you'll check out Jeff throughout the week at the forum at forum.dognation.com and on the pages of dognation.com. Lots of really good stories up there from him today, including more on the quarterback from Walton High School, originally a Wolfpack of Nevada, now coming to the University of Georgia. You can hear from Jeff on that. And, of course, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily, and we'll talk about everything happening around UGA as it gets ready for Texas A&M on Saturday. Y'all have a great day, and we'll, of course, see you back here again next week at the same time for Before the Hedges presented by Kroger.